Well, I would like to welcome you to the Watkins Glen Reading Series. And this is, we normally hold them on the fourth Monday, but this is the fifth. and we've been switching venues due to COVID, so I don't know for sure where we will be next month, but we will find out depending on how cases are here. Right now I think Schuyler County's kind of holding. It's in a holding pattern. so anyway, I just would like to welcome you here, and I'm going to pass a basket for donations, and this reading will be funded in part by the poets and writers of New York City. But we always promise that we will donate something. I don't know if you can hear me, but hopefully you can. Okay. So we have two readers tonight, and Michael is, I'm not sure who's starting. Is it
Steve? Is. Yeah.
And Michael's going to introduce Stephen. I've known him for a number of years, and he has been to several of our readings. Happy to have him back.
Thank you, Charlie. And there will be an open reading afterwards. After the feature reading, we'll take a little break, and there'll be an open reading. Just to mention that, that's always been the standard. 27 years now, Charlotte, this reading series has been going on. So
since 1994.
Yeah, 1994, so 27 years. That's quite an accomplishment. And so I want to introduce my good friend.
Charlotte.
Yeah, let's give her a hand. Yeah, Charlotte and I started this way back.
Yeah.
So I want to introduce Steve Coffman, good friend and writer. Who's been, I've been writing for over 50 years. He's been writing longer than that. And he has written, he started out writing plays and had a number of plays produced back in the 60s. And then he wanted to move to the country, and he thought if he's going to stay a playwright, he's going to have to move to New York City. He didn't want to do that. So instead, he moved to a farm up in Dundee, up in the hills near Dundee, and lived there until about 5 years ago, 4+ years ago. So since he wasn't in the playwriting world of New York City, he shifted to short stories and had a lot of success selling short stories. Redbook was a really wonderful outlet for short story fiction then, and he had a number of pieces published there. One of his was anthologized in the Best of Redbook. And then he shifted over to writing a memoir about living in the country, all relating to animals, How to Walk a Pig. And he actually has one copy here. I know he has very few of these around. So How to Walk a Pig, which is a memoir from living in the country for decades, and their animals, relating mainly to animals, but so much more than that. And then actually that book was hardcover and softcover, and then it went out of print, and then another publisher picked up on it, and that wanted a few new chapters, and that's Chicken Justice. So there's one copy of that around too. And Chicken Justice is How to Walk a Pig plus stuff. And then he likes to say he went old for the 80s. The 80s were not a good time for him. Couldn't get things published at all. And then in the 90s, we published two of his political essay books. Foothills Publishing published Piecemeal and Messy Freedom. And then he's been writing poetry. He's working on an autobiography. And Steve writes. That's what he has done with his whole life. He writes. So you're going to hear a little bit of what Steve writes. So Steve Coffman, it's your show.
He knows me better than I know myself.
Well, he's allowed to brag about you.
Well, I'm going to read a couple of different things here. Some poetry and some not poetry. put this back in my pocket because I think it's my little pocket poem, so I should put it in my pocket.
Just like Kerouac, eh?
That's right. I've got, as you can see, they're very, very small for what they are. This is two moms who bring us from our soft, cozy darkness within to self-discovery of tears and need, sight and light. Moms who held and suckled us, kissed away our nightmares, who's whispered in our ears, in our tender ears, how to love and what to fear. Souls demystified. Soul searching is a laudable pursuit. Soul finding, a bloody miracle. This is the paradox of souls made misty clear. Stranger, sinner, cynic. The stranger alertly observes the place. The sinner knows better, but does it anyway. The saint sacrifices life itself in faith of a perfect, kinder place. The cynic shrugs it off like probable rain, walks with umbrella as a cane. Getting my shot. Nurse had no window in her tiny niche. Seemed a bit glum, so I cheered her up, even got her to chuckle some. Both before and after she stuck the needle in. That was pretty close to the truth. This poor woman giving shots all day in this little cubby hole. Quietude. What an anopoetic word. It sounds almost as lovely as its meaning. Two gentle kisses with I in the middle. Wooing from lip to tongue. A regal word with no need or desire of scepter or crown. Okay, those are those. Back into the pocket with those. I call this one, this is an intro, I call it Ode to Michael. Hey, you didn't know that, did you? I'll leave the rest of the poetry today to Michael. Michael has all kinds of poems up his sleeve, near his heart. Epiphanies and rambles to haikus and senryu are just stories from his, or just stories from his endless trips. Odd couple of sorts, Michael and I. Me tending toward inclusion, rarely reading. Excuse me, him tending toward inclusion, me toward inclusion, rarely read. Michael, going everywhere, reads up and down from coast to coast, is the great encourager, makes friends wherever he goes, remembers them all and keeps in touch, loves nature, even mushrooms and plants, stars and planets too, loves them, winks at them, knows them by name. He loves poems so much, he's even got me writing some. Me, a cynic and recluse, even before COVID and my creeping Alzheimer's. That accounts for a few of my pauses, by the way. Actually, Michael and I have been hanging out some for quite a few years now, in quite a few venues. And why not? Hey, he can even pick up the pieces now and sometimes inspire a beat up off that old cynic like me. When Michael and I go read together, I always go first. I always go first. Some of my weirdest bits, groaning, then open the windows and shades and let in the sweetness and light. Just to set things straight, I wasn't always a beat-up old cynic, of course. For most of my life, I've just been a shruggy, regular cynic with a big ego that needed to get out and cock-a-doodle-doo every now and then. See, here I go. I'm going to start with 5 very small poems that I call pocket poems because they're in my pocket. I already read them. Okay, never mind that. So much for being in the right order. Here's a little one. One more poem. I call this Friday the 13th, which of course just passed recently. Samuel Beckett style. Waiting for Godot? Yeah, I guess so. Especially on Friday the 13th then? No, just to you with that crimpled and godless grinning. But so much mocking, knocking at your door before he lets you in. Or you with your perhaps last tape, putting mom and pops in pots. Yet, how I miss you, you Irish rascal, you. Of course you do, old Pozzo, as I too must bid my farewell with a limping, glorious, so what? Okay, and this is a little piece of prose. This is a phone conversation between a reporter from a local chronicle and a somewhat less than cooperative bored guy with nothing better to do than to lead him along a little.
Not to mention any names.
Not to mention any names. This was wildly based on an experience that I actually did have when I was a little bit, very young, a little bit out of my mind with some other friends, and we got this call from this guy from the reporter in Rochester. He wanted to interview me. It kind of came out of that. It was Pessimist Convention. Hello there. Oh, I'll signal when it changes. I think you'll know anyway, though. Hello there. Willard Harris from the Granville Chronicle. Are you the person to talk to about this Regional Pessimism Club convention I hear about? Don't know, man. You got so much of that positive energy jumping through the phone, about zapping me dead right there. So I guess you're not the decision maker then? Can you tell me who might the right contact be? Not so much right, describing any pessimists I know. Anyway, if not me, wouldn't know who else. I suppose I am about as close as you're likely to get, but I wouldn't get my hopes up too high if I were you. But it wouldn't be untrue to say, at least, you might be part of the group that could have at least discussed planning such a convention. Well, I don't know if I could go so far as to say group planning. For that, you'd be better off talking to an optimist for something. Not that I know any personally, but if I did, he'd surely be better bet than any of the lost losers I hang with, if they even bothered to show. I'm tired covering the optimists. They always get the print. My readers would like to hear the other side. It's time for a pessimist convention to balance the table. An unconventional convention. A whole new twist. A twist around the neck. You mean, they'd probably love to see us wither and die for them right on stage. Whoop-de-doo. Sorry, I don't mean to laugh, but that's just really such great stuff. And pretty hard to imagine anyone but you and Caligula would think so. Great stuff. Look, don't you worry about interest. That's where I come in. Say you actually could pull this off. Where might it be held? And when? The optimists usually have their conventions in midsummer, usually in the Civic Auditorium. Whoa, there, Will. Now you're scaring the bejesus out of me. Pessimists on a stage? That's like dumping a wheelbarrow full of marbles on a racetrack or something. I mean, even if the fates were willing, Will, and you managed to pull off this monstrosity, besides yours truly, what other freaks would even come? Will chuckles. You know, you really are funny. You'd be great on stage. And if you could set this up, I absolutely promise to write it up and promote it and guarantee you an enthusiastic audience. Now you got me laughing too. Just trying to imagine what kind of losers and kooks would actually buy tickets to go to a freak show like that. Like, hey man, let's go see that Rotten Lives meetup that they're running downtown, moaning, sighing, and about dying, and worse. I hear this Willie guy has to round them up every night and herd them on stage with a whip. Crazy fun, that. You're too much. I'm still holding to my promise. All you have to do is find a place and do it. A miracle in itself. If I was the sort who believed, even had an hair's belief in miracles, things is, well, I don't and won't. What I believe is in finding sticky old gum in the bottom of my pocket. Pretty funny if it ends up in the clothes dryer, but not so good on the stage. Yeah, if we sing, pray together in circle and pass out, honking horns while, excuse me, missed that line. We'll chuckle. Believe me, they'll come. That little bit alone will be enough to bring them in droves. Yeah, if we sing, pray together in a circle, and pass out, honking horns while wearing funny hats. Well, maybe we'll titter. Realistically, though, how many of your members do you think we could really count on? Ah, well, realistically. Really? I was just about to thank you for this whole time-eating distraction. That's one of them tricky trap that I don't myself miss this mess. Really is realistically, your chances of pulling this off are about the same as our unlevel best to keep ourselves miserable. Tend the bemoaning things. Count our wood nickels. Wear Charlie Brown shirts. Kicking off one of Lucy's footballs. Or herding, kicking around cats. What about your group? There is no group. Pessimists occasionally drink from the same water holes, pass out together, moan together for a while before they've had enough. Some newbie trying to curl his way in with some little snark or ditty. That's about as good or bad as it gets until the misery loves company goes wrong and everybody splinters or splits. A Pyrrhic victory. Crappy time had by all. That's the pinnacle. About as good as it gets. I think of them as my groaners for everybody. But let's do it anyway. pastime. Even those are such drags, they never last more than an hour or two. Yes, just what I mean, an hour or two. That would be just perfect. Is that your idea of a cruel joke? Tell me, Will. If not for your article idea, would you really pay money to go to or read about a convention of glum asses like that? If that's your idea of secret fun, maybe you should join us. Know that that's a funny thought. You could join us up at our next party, if we ever have another party, which I seriously doubt. Seriously, if I had to choose, I'd say Friday. I think next Friday would work for me. Everything else being equal. Which, of course, nothing ever is. All right. And if this Friday group goes for it, can I at least today put you down for at least one of our leading speakers? Wow, you're sneaky. Even saying that, maybe it was set to come off. No doubt. Die of a heart attack before it did. Could it? Not that. I'd probably be the only one that showed. Whew. Just one lone weirdo talking to himself on opening night with all them rows of empty seats. Like rehearsal for a funeral that includes a person who's about to die. There's a grabber, Will. Maybe the dead will have a convention too. Well, for now, why don't you just leave it at this? If you live through it, I get an exclusive to write the column. Is that a deal? Hard to say for certain, Will. I'm going to write this up as a teaser for you to read and pass around. Would you know what might spring from that? I'll let you know the day before it's coming out. By the way, I've got your phone number, but I don't even have your name or address. Well, actually, Will, I'm just cat sitting here for a crazy friend anyway. I don't live here, and I never give my name to strangers. But good luck with it, though, and hey, I enjoyed the conversation.
Finally done it, Steve. You finally done it. That's it, man. You've done it. There you go. Incredible. Incredible. Steve Coffman. Yeah. The pessimist. Thank you, Steve. Thank you.
And I would introduce Michael, but I think I did already earlier. As if you don't all know.
Thank you, Steve.
Yes.
So yeah, good to be here. It's so nice to have a live reading again. Whoa. Yes, wonderful to have this happen. So thank you all for being here. Charlotte, thank you for inviting us to read. And I want to thank poets and writers for sponsoring this, being one of the sponsors of this event, and yeah, we thank you all for being here. And who's reading next month, Charlotte?
Well, Steve Lewandowski.
Steve Lewandowski here.
Yeah.
I think you are next month, right?
Yeah, next month, yeah.
So I'm gonna be reading just recent poems. I think most of you know on Facebook every day I do a spontaneous poem. So I'm just gonna read some of those. Sort of different categories. I won't be reading all of these, okay? So, but they're all mostly short, very short, and they're not titled, and they're written just once, and that's it. No changing, no editing. I knelt on ground and field with thumb, forefinger, gently picked dangling ripe wild strawberry, treasured fruit's sweetness, as I placed it on my tongue, then another, as sun approached western horizon, these last hours before solstice, this first fruit of summer, a gift thankfully accepted. They're so much better than cultivated ones, but they're so tiny, you know. And that's the treasure of them too. And you have to get down right to the ground to get them and be connected to the earth. After poetry reading, after conversation, after sunset over water, just before getting in car, looms tremulous music drifted through air from pond. I was up at Tupper Lake, poetry reading there. I'll be there in October again. No cost of admission, just stand on porch, bright sky flashes, sudden lightning bolts, cloud to cloud, cloud to sky, rolling rumbles, thundering crashes, skylight entertainment, no ticket needed.
Some of those.
In garden, bumblebee on borage. Next to garden, butterfly and bergamot. And I think a few traveling ones. And I think most of you know, like Steve mentioned too, I travel across country on poetry tours and haven't for almost 2 years now. I was planning a 2-month tour this fall, September, October, all the way out to California and Oregon and that. Places in between, people and poetry and friends. And it just didn't seem comfortable enough to do that. Maybe, no, in spring, I'm going to be positive. Not maybe in spring, in spring. Poetic Road calls, and this is when I was planning this. This is when, hey, we are opening up, okay? Poetic Road calls, planning poetry readings, planning visits with friends, grateful to be able to do this once again. 70 years old, back on Poetic Road. Year previous didn't exist. No Poetic Road journeys. Here today in Winchester, Virginia, planning further journeys out west. Maybe this is my true home, poetic vagabond, no fixed abode. So I did a little tour down to Virginia, Winchester. Well, it wasn't even a tour, but it was a little poetic work and visiting with friends. And this was down there. It was actually West Virginia. As I stood on bridge, watched Capon River flow slowly underneath, I thought of other bridges stood on over so many decades, other flowing waters gazed at, thought of how I'm drawn to flow, to movement, to water, always heading someplace further on. Precious time together with friends. May I never, ever take it for granted. Eventually, I'll make it out your way. Those are for all the friends way out there. Eventually, I will make it out your way. And I've been doing Zooming every Tuesday night, a free Zoom program ever since last April. So, year and whatever, how many programs it's been. And every Tuesday it's something different. And so this relates to that. But I apologize to my Zoom people. Tonight's live program, so much more vibrant, as energy flowed through air, as an energy not felt on Zoom. Clapping icons don't feel. Muted hands clapping don't sound. Someone's sigh can't be heard. I desire to be in person. To all my Zoom people, I want you to experience me. I want to experience you. Not in virtual time, but in real life. This is where we are time. I know you understand. I think the Zoom people understand that. What's been really nice is I have met some of those Zoom-only people in person, which has been great. It's like, yes. Okay, some people once. Where is she now? Almost 5 decades ago, intense short relationship, songs connected to that moment. Eagles, Peaceful, Easy Feeling. Rod Stewart, Mandolin Wind. Songs that resonated for her, resonated with our relationship as she saw what it was. She of suburban upbringing, me working class neighborhood. She loved my peaceful nature. Her mother said to her, "He doesn't have a pot to pee in." It didn't go very far. Where is she now? Tomorrow, seeing a friend not seen for years. I'm sure once we meet, it will have only seemed like days. If I want to see you, maybe I should just go. Get in car, drive down road, get to your place in due time. Yet, there is so much work to do, so many responsibilities tugging at my conscience. Yet again, connection with other, it's too a responsibility to self, to other. This week is too busy. Maybe next week I'll get in car, go. I think I read those already. Your words, meaningful to me. Thank you for sending them my way. There are lingerings that never go away. In dream last night, she was there so real. I was there so real. Haven't seen her recently. It's been a number of years. Would have seen her later this year when on my Western poetic journey. That isn't happening now. COVID put an end to that. Must content myself with seeing her in dream for now. Now this is a life experience. Let me just pick these up. Just happened a few days ago. I opened priority envelope, my original birth certificate inside, hidden in secret for decades. My only other birth certificate for my adoption 6 years later. I know who my real father was. Would he be noted on certificate? What would be my last name on that official paper of my birth? There is no father named on that original birth certificate. My name, Michael, godlike. Might I, who is godlike, have been born from a virgin birth? I doubt it. I did find out that in the 50s, in that time period, unwed mothers, if they had a baby, the father wasn't listed. Another religious poem. Skinny dipping swim in Lord's Pond. It truly was a blessing. That's an actual pond in Pennsylvania. Visiting, some of you know Craig Cherry. Small swipe removes dust that has settled on things. How to remove dust that has settled on self. Let sun bathe you in luminescence, penetrate beyond surface, warm your deepest recesses. Then let your inner light, your inner warmth, reach out beyond self. Doubt creeps in when least expected. When they do, hard to shake loose. Outside, rain beats a steady rhythm. Inside, heart beats a steady rhythm. Rain beat, heartbeat, outside, inside, all of one piece. And peace is P-E-A-C, all of one piece. Sideways, sometimes, life isn't always straightforward. So easy to forget spirit. We get caught up in trivial concerns, react in sudden ways without taking breath, without inhaling, without exhaling, without spirit. At window by my desk, small white moth lands on screen, drawn to light. Unable to reach it, it flies off. Returns again, flies off, returns again, flies off, returns again. Such persistence, trying to attain light. I can't change much of what happens out there. What I can change is what happens in here. Breathe in salt air, breathe out old dust. Cleanse what's inside, bring in something new. This body grows older, inside is forever young. Just a few more. Sometimes brief encounters lead to deeper connection somewhere further on. And I've got a whole lot of stories about that. You know, where you just connect with somebody just briefly, and then what might happen beyond. When one attains mountainous heights, what then? And I've been influenced a lot by the Chinese, Japanese poets and that, and they're mentioned here. This near full moon, same moon Ryokan gazed upon, same moon Basho gazed upon, same moon Seigyo gazed upon, same moon Li Bai gazed upon, same moon Dao Chen gazed upon, same moon been here forever. Whether we like it or not, ghosts still linger in places we have been. Maybe 3 more. Can I take you somewhere you've never been? Somewhere you can't even imagine? Where might that be? You won't know till you suddenly come upon it. Yes, this is that place. You couldn't know, couldn't imagine. Once there, you'd wonder, why did it take so long to discover? Some endings aren't real endings. Some beginnings aren't real beginnings. What we thought was over might not be. What we thought was starting might not be. Maybe best to stop thinking. Let what happens happen in this moment now. I think just a couple more. This one, one last one. Okay. 3 more. Sorry, there's one volunteer one. We'll just go with these two, finish with these. Connection. That's what I want my words to do. Connect me to you. To connect you to, that's what it's all about. We were in New York City a couple of days. 5 hours in Manhattan, more people than I've seen in 5 months back home. And then final one. And again, thank you all for being here, and we'll just take just a short little break and then do the open reading.
Yeah.
I used to be, then I became someone else. Not who I was, not who I never was, just someone else. Still am, till this I becomes a used to be, turns in again to someone else. So, thank you, everybody. Thank you. And there are books here. Steve's got books, I've got books. If anyone's interested, any of my books are $10 each. Whatever they're marked otherwise.
And thank you so much, Michael and Steve. We really enjoyed being here tonight. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Charlotte.
I'm going to pass around a basket, a donation basket.